Hello, this is Tobias Schönhaff from the company Extreme Distribution, based in Germany, exclusive distributor of Flowworks for EMEA mostly. Flowworks, a German MAM, PAM, and production management system. And today I have here with me Oliver Meurer, which is the CEO of Flowworks. And I think later also Axel Jerabek will join us, the CTO of Flowworks. Oliver, are you with us?
I can hear you very well, thank you.
Very good. So I think we start with, I hand over to you because you're obviously the expert, and I invite you to start the webinar, please.
Okay, well, if you could just show my screen. There we are. There's my screen coming up. Okay, guys, I hope you can all see my screen. Just a second. There we go.
Also,
Right.
if you have any questions during the webinar, please type it in. We might answer them directly, or at the end, there is also time for answering questions.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for joining. Thanks for taking the time. I would like to go through what we do and explain a little bit about us in a couple of chapters. In the first chapter, using 3 or 4 slides, I would just like to give you a general overview to explain what is it that we do, where do we have our expertise, show you a couple of use cases or explain the use cases, i.e. show you who we work for. That should be fairly short. In the second bit, I would like to take you through the system or various parts of the system, namely looking at content management from an editorial perspective, integration and workflow from a technical perspective, and then finally talk a little bit about how to monetize or how we help customers monetize their content by publication, for example. Again, as Toby said, please feel free to interrupt at any time. Point me in the direction that you would like to go. Toby will moderate, but I'll try and answer as much as I can. The first chart that we're looking at is called Flow Expertise. Now, what you see in the so-called bubble chart are various perspectives on what our customers do. So some of our customers are focused on production, and hence they have special needs regarding ingest, regarding QC, tying in editing systems, tying in graphic systems and the like, doing various audio versions of content, and we cover all of that. Moving down towards the left at the bottom, we have, for example, broadcasters who use an awful lot of third-party machinery, such as QC system, ingesters, editing systems. They have other additional databases, for example, where they might already have a database for metadata, or they might have databases for their legal information, such as selling price, license windows, that sort of stuff. They might, on the other hand, be using other processing machinery, such as Signet or Aspera. They could be using a CDN and the like. So one of our strong suits is to integrate pretty much everything under the sun. So any type of third-party system that you might already have or are thinking of using it, being on site or in the cloud, that doesn't really make any difference to us. We will integrate to help you build complete workflows, i.e. workflows covering your entire media process and your media life cycle, and thus integrating functions and abilities that the Flow Center might not include, or that other systems are better at, such as an editing suite. Then at the bottom also you see it says workflow design, and it says something very simple. It says design, run, and edit. So what the system offers you is the ability to autonomously design any workflow that you currently have, test that, run that workflow, be it fully automated or be it including an editorial interaction, such as approvals or adding metadata and the like, And then, of course, as your environment develops and as your needs change, you may need to edit workflows at some point, such as just change a transcoder setting, change a target, change a QC setting. All of that, which we will look at in a minute, under workflow design, is built for you to have the autonomy to create, run, and edit those workflows by yourself, thus also taking the decision how much automation you want. The system is geared toward giving you 100% automation. Of course, that depends on your individual workflows. And we will, of course, consult with you. We will give you use cases and examples of how we or our customers have created workflows to help you, master the system yourself. And again, I stress the word work autonomously, which is really important because it does make a pricing difference. If you have the tools to build your own workflows, you don't have to call us, and hence you don't have to pay us. At the top, changing the topic a little bit, we're going to go into the content management, i.e. the editorial parts of the system. We simply call that the archive because most of our users are not techies. Most of our users are regular people, normal people who, for example, work in the marketing department, who do editorial jobs at a broadcaster, who might be press officers, or just somebody, for example, in an industrial company who is in charge of managing and organizing the company archive. So these types of users will not be looking for all sorts of fancy technological stuff. They might want to use it, but they don't want to be confronted with it the whole time. And they want the technology part to really run as automated as is possible. So we have a special set of GUIs for these users, and they will be focused around managing their ingest, managing the content, managing the metadata, running projects and sharing them, i.e. collaborating, getting approvals, and then finally taking publishing decisions, where once they have, cleaned up and structured their archive, they will decide, I am now going to start publishing content to various target groups. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail later, but just to summarize, where would I publish to? I would, for example, if I am the boss of the archive of Siemens, I might want to share approved content across the Siemens organization, i.e. do that internally, but it's still nevertheless a publishing, where I want the guys in Hong Kong to have direct access in a very simple environment, which will look a little bit like Google, for example, like an internal Google, where they can find pictures, videos, documents, they can look at metadata, they may be able to change some of the metadata, but not all of it, etc., etc. And that publishing obviously then stretches out from internal to external. And there we're already in the next bubble, which is called Playout. So Playout is pretty much anything where we would show a file to a broader public. That could be broadcast, that could be VOD platforms, your own or a third-party platform such as Netflix. That could be any website. That could be a sales website, that could be a homepage, that could be your press page, what have you. It could be an app, could be a room, which I'll explain a little bit later. It could be a shop, could be social media, or of course could be standard file delivery. If you're a producer, you are going to deliver your files to your broadcast client, fulfill your contract, and then receive the money. So having discussed all the bubbles on the outside, we come to the flow core, which sits at the center of the system. And that is basically a MAM system, a MAM or a PAM system, depending on what your use case or environment might be. That includes a lot of the basic features. It's basically the database side of things. It's the user database, the rights management, i.e. which user is allowed to do or see what. It handles all of the transcoding thing. There is a built-in transcoder that comes with a Flow Center. That's where we handle the architecture, which is basically answering the question, would you like to have your system on site? Would you like to have your system hosted? Would you like to have your system in the cloud? Or would you like a hybrid system that may be partly on site and partly in the cloud? So in the core, we really do those basic management things besides all of the basic MAM things. And as a whole, what you get is quite an encompassing system. So it does an awful lot of things, and we'll look at that a little bit when we talk about our use cases. But importantly, the system comes in modules. So even though it's a very big system, we have a lot of customers who say, okay, I am just going to start with my most urgent need, which is, for example, I need to manage an archive. I'm not worried about production. I don't need to do a lot of device integration. At the moment, I'm going to do standard workflows. So my first point of call is I'm going to create an archive and then grow the system from there. Once they've completed their archive job, they may want to go into Playout. They may want to start integrating third-party machinery, etc. Or coming from the other direction, which we often have with producers or broadcasters, they basically say, my focus is I need to automate more of my workflows. I need to make sure they are automated across my entire machinery, i.e. all of the part systems that I have. So I'm going to start looking for device integration and workflow design first. And once I've built that and I've managed to really economize my throughput, i.e. the processing side of things, I may want to later add things like archive or playout. So the upside of having such a big system is obviously that it covers a lot of ground. The way we've executed that is by building them in modules, allowing you as a potential customer, reseller, integrator, to really pick and choose. It's a little bit like a Chinese menu. It's very big, but you can start with just the starters if you like. And if you enjoyed those, have a main course. If you still like it, have a dessert as well. So it's a big system grown out of a big experience. And I'm going to simply jump to my next slide if my laptop would agree. Right, here we go. I'm just going to go straight into some of the references before we now move over to showing you the system live. The reason why I'd like you to see this is really to make 2 points. One, of course, we have absolutely fantastic customers, and we love each and every one of them. And we have very good references, as I hope you will agree. But the more important point is you can see customers where you might think, oh, they're very different. Well, in fact, they are not. Because what all of our customers do, and that's really one of the baselines of the Flow system, they all do 3 things. They produce content or have it produced for them. Secondly, they own and manage content. And thirdly, they publish or play out their content, i.e. make it visible to whomever their target group is. So all of these customers that you see in here do those 3 things: produce, manage, and play out. But they obviously do it in a very different context. They do it in very different environments. Some of them are big, some of them are small. Some of them use all of the machinery that we offer, some only use parts. What I'm really trying to say is I'm trying to underscore the point that the system, as well as our business models, are very flexible. We can start small and grow big. Or of course, we love starting big and staying big or getting even bigger. But that's something that we are very avid at. We love developing. We've developed a lot, so we have a lot to tell you and a lot to show you. It's a very versatile and yet big system. And we are very good at making it fit to the specific need at the specific time of individual customers. Okay, now enough of the charts. Unless there are questions, please interrupt if there are, or let me know right now. I would like to go to the system as well. And the part that I would like to start off with, I want to show you 3 parts to the system. I want to show you the editorial management GUI, i.e. that's the non-technical GUI where you see your content. I want to secondly show you the workflow and integration part. And thirdly, I want to show you the publishing part. So let me start off on media management. This GUI is built for Porsche, as you can see. It's one of the latest GUIs that we're just in the process of launching. It's one of several alternative views to the system. But I would specifically like to start on this one because it's new, it's sleek. What we've really tried to do is keep this very, very neat and tidy and as much as possible self-explanatory to editorial users. So the one thing you're not going to see on this GUI at all is any technical buttons. Why? Because we run technology and we run processing, but this is nothing that an editorial user would want to look at. Instead, you find the standards that you would expect. Let's go up here. And so let's just do a search, for example. I'm just going to use a full search, a full text search. I get search results. I can start to filter them. I can, for example, choose what type of content I would like to see, only video and photos. I can now activate documents as well. I can sort these in all sorts of ways. Obviously, the surface comes in several languages. I've just chosen German now as an example. If I spot a content that I find interesting, I simply click it, and I immediately get an overview of some of the key metadata. Obviously, this metadata is now written for Porsche. I can switch the metadata language here as well. Maybe that's a bit more comfortable for us as a group now. So I get an immediate overview of the key metadata. Again, this metadata is individual customer by customer, and it's very easily settable. So it's nothing to worry about, that's just a configuration. If I find this content even more interesting, I can simply double click it and get the full view of the content, meaning I get the key metadata that we saw already. But then down here, I have additional fields where I can place additional metadata information, as well as down here, I have additional content, which was mostly derivatives, i.e. technical versions of the content. I'm sure you're familiar with the process of ingesting a piece of content and then saying, I need the system to create previews for me. If I've got previews, those previews will go into the bin that we just saw. Let's just actually take a video that's a bit more interesting. I'm just going to open a video content. And then down here, you see a whole list of derivatives. These are various technical versions of the same video. So the derivatives in here, which are basically qualities, will be automatically generated by the system and put into the same container. Now, the container is a very important concept for the flow system. For this particular entry that I'm now looking at, which has got an ID, so I've got the videos that I can obviously preview. I have all the metadata. I have all of the technical versions, or maybe even editorial versions of this content. I have additional media content such as imagery, as you can see here, which was uploaded into the same container. I have my distribution information, so where was this published to and when, under what conditions, etc. And I might even have comments such as approvals. There's nothing in here at the moment. And all of that sits in the same container. So the container is really like a shoebox, where a piece of media and all of the knowledge connected to that media is in one spot. Very easy to find, very easy to navigate, always kept on the same level and status, means it's structured and it's controllable. If I now take the judgment that I want to add the status to this and make this an internal video, the system would know that it would not be allowed to publish this video to any Playout site, for example. So from the media container, I can really start doing a lot of the steerage. On the other hand, just to give you this quick explanation, I can decide again by a configuration of my users who is allowed to see which fields and which of the fields would they be allowed to actually edit. I might not be able to edit any of the fields, or I might just be able be allowed to edit parts of the fields or certain languages, but not all of the language versions. As you can see here, I've got the metadata in several languages. So that's what a container does. And I think you'll find it's fairly obvious and it's fairly logical. Of course, in the views, I can do a gallery view or a list view. The things that are shown up here are, of course, again, customizable, or actually configurable per user. So the amount of metadata I see here, as well as the buttons that I see here, which is a download, adding it to a shopping cart, which is up here, or doing certain functions, like deleting, which I'm not going to do, I better not, is again fully steerable. Let's go a little bit further, and I've opened up a panel over here, and it gives you 3 additional functional areas. One is an upload. Quite simply, this allows me to do browser upload. When uploading, I obviously will upload clips, but I will be able to add metadata to the clips. Then I can add, where does this clip belong? For example, would I like this clip to immediately show up in a given project? For example, a project that already exists. So I'm not going to do that right now. And I'm not going to explain the rooms at this point, but basically when doing uploads, you can add not just the media files, you can add any amount of metadata, you can add ancillary media such as pictures in this particular case. I can obviously upload 1 clip or 1,000 clips, and we just happen to be in the GUI at the moment. I can upload via this particular GUI. I can upload via other web-based GUIs. I can upload via a network connection. I can upload from a different database. I can upload from a watch folder. I can upload via Signiant, Aspera, and the like. So obviously there's lots of ways into the system. Just to show you one example, that was the browser-based upload. Then over here, I have a thing called projects. Now, what is a project? Project is basically the ability to create a folder in the system and furnish that project with content. So let's say I've got a project here. In this case, there is some content in here, I hope. Let me just see. Yep, there's some content in here. I can see this project, which is called Politics. It's got 16 photographs in it. I can see the photographs. What I can do with this project, I can now assign this project for others to be able to see and perhaps even edit the project. For example, I could include Toby as part of my project team, and he would now see this project and be able to add content, delete content, etc., add some metadata to the project itself. And hence I can use the project as an internal collaboration tool. I could further go and say in the project, which might also have sub-projects, of course, I can run a production. If I'm going to do an ad, I might have a subfolder for the raw material. I might have a further subfolder for the first edited versions, a third one for final edits, which I will then send from the project to my customer for him to approve that. Maybe make a 4th subfolder for language versions, etc., So the concept of the project is obviously very simple and something everybody is accustomed to and knows, because it's like little yellow folders you use on your desktop or you use on your internal drives. Of course, when we move content into a project, we never make a copy. We simply add a pointer. I'm not going to move anything live here because you can imagine this is all a Porsche live system. If I want to move several one, I simply click them and move them. The same is true for creating a new project. Obviously, simply click here. The same is true for something we call the room. Now, the room is a real collaboration tool. It's basically a communication tool that's built into the system. What the room does, it allows you to basically get the system to create a microsite for you, and furnish that microsite to somebody who you would like to see that specific set of content. So this is a particular room, and you can already see it's got some markers. That is because this is used as an approval room. So the ones that I've sent out to Manuel, that's a guy, he's seen that and he's already approved them. So I get a feedback in my room with the green boundary here that he's seen it and he's approved those. These ones who don't have a mark yet, he hasn't seen. I will show you a bunch of versions of the rooms in a minute when we get to publishing. I just wanted to quickly explain that beyond the internal collaboration tools you have with projects, you can use the very same system as an external collaboration room system, creating the rooms. Now, there are all sorts of reasons to collaborate, internal and external, be it you want to get uploaded. You want an external producer to send you files. Use an upload room. You want to simply show somebody as an informational marketing tool. Use a showroom. You want your boss to approve something, use an approval room. You want to deliver certain files to your external post-production for them to do the audio tracks or what have you, use a download room. If you want to move the whole thing over into marketing, use it as a sales room, use it as a newsroom, use it as an event room. You can imagine there are loads and loads of different ways to use the room, because there are loads of different occasions and good reasons to share content with external people. But, and this is the important part, you want to stay in control. So I want to be able to publish a room to Toby or Stefan, but I want to make sure that I am still boss of the content. So I'm not going to allow him to download if I don't want him to. I want Stefan to have my content, but with the branding, and the system will automatically make him. I want Stefan to have certain functions, such as view some of the metadata, be able to edit some of the metadata even, be able to download, but if he downloads, I only want him to get a certain quality, and I want my logo, my branding to be in that download, etc., etc. And that is something you can steer in each room individually. It's a very wide field. I'm not going to go into all the detail at the moment. We might come back to it a little bit later. I hope, but I wanted to give you a very quick overview over what an editorial environment can look like. What we've tried to do here is keep it very clean, make it very intuitive, it's easy to use. Obviously, I can manage myself very well. For example, I can do all of my individual settings, put in my own picture, choose the language I would like this GUI to be in, choose the color, choose certain settings, choose the notifications that I would like to have, etc., etc. By the same token, I can go and manage other users in here. I'm not going to do that right now by going into the admin area. And at the end of the day, going into the admin area will also allow me to set my metadata structure very, very simply and very, very easily. Okay, now, if there are no questions at this point, I would like to move over to the second part that I would like to show you, which is a technical part, which is a technological part. I'm just going to quickly log out of here, and I'm going to log into a slightly different GUI. This GUI that we're going to go for is for the techies. And it still looks a little bit different, which is no matter. Up here you have various buttons, as you can see. I can reopen the media archive that we just looked at from here. I can manage my devices in here. I'm not going to do that for the moment because I want to get to the workflows. So I'm going to go to the workflow manager. And the thing that I'd like to explain to you is, as I'm sure you still remember, I said at the beginning, I'm just going to pick an exemplary workflow here. The system is geared towards giving you the autonomy to build your workflows. So let's start at the top. What are the workflows? Basically, workflows are a chain of events where certain things are, designed to happen. They are, in a lot of cases, a technical processing, such as an ingest, such as a metadata ingest, such as a transcoding, such as a QC, etc., etc. But by the same token and by the same methodology, they could also be a user interaction. For example, at a certain point, I need a user to complete some metadata. At a certain point, I need a user to give me an approval. And all of the type of functions that I've just described are basically what we call nodes. In the system, you can see them here as these individual little boxes. So each of these boxes is basically a function. And you can really see this by some of the names. If you are a techie, this will make sense to you. If you're not a techie, this will sound a bit strange to you. But just see it as a picture of the workflow is basically a chain of events. And a workflow with us is basically depicted also as a chain of events, as shown here. And the one that I've actually currently shown you is a real one. This is how, for example, MTV delivers VOD content to the Sky network, and specifically, of course, their VOD offerings. So what the chain of event basically does, it says there is a certain input. In this particular case, it comes from a scheduling system whereby a person sitting in front of the scheduler says, I've got 100 episodes of Pimp My Ride and I'm going to put those on Sky VOD. And he enters that information in a what's on system in this particular case, and we then get that information sent to us by What's On, which is our starting point. We at this point then import the media files, meaning the video files, which we pull from a digital archive, which is at our disposal. We pull in audio versions, we pull in subtitle versions, we pull in branding pictures, we pull in pre-roll and post-roll videos. I think that's about it. I don't think I forgot anything. And we put them together in the way that we know we need for the final outcome, which is of course down here, to be able to be delivered to the VOD platform. The way we do that in detail, we might get to in detail. I don't really want to open up all these nodes. Just to show you an exemplary node, for example, if I then want to transcode the video I have in the flow system, this is now pretty empty. I have the ability, and I'm going to deliberately pick out a transcoder. I have the ability to set my machinery, which could be internal, i.e. FlowWorks, could be external, i.e. in this particular case, it's a carbon coder. I am able to set exactly what I want that machine to do in the context of this particular workflow. So what I'm doing is case by case, I am getting the system to do certain things for me, and case by case, I can very precisely map and create how I want certain processes to be executed, workflow by workflow. For example, here, I said I need to import XML. And as you can see here, I am saying what the X path is. I told it exactly what action I want, so I get a choice. And I can basically define into what field in my database I would like that to go into. And I can just build these. As you can see here, I can create anything, do anything, and import into any field that I would like to have. So I hope this point is getting across. At the end of the day, I am creating a workflow by adding these nodes, connecting them, and then configuring what I'd like that node to do. If that is clear, the next question is, so where do these nodes come from? Simply put, over here you have on the left a nice menu, and it says sources. And here you will find a long list or a short list, depending on who you are, of various sources of files, of information, of user interaction. So let's, for example, say at this point I need an XML to be imported. All I do is I pick my function, I pull it to the position where I would like it to be. I will hook it up into my workflow simply by hitting these connectors, and then I will configure what I would like the system to do. So this is again, what we just had, doing the configuration, build my mapping. You can of course do this via XSLT as well if you want to go into more detail. But that's the basic principle of how you build your workflows. So from the menu on the left, and this will differ customer to customer, you have your sources, you have your workers, which are basically functions. I'm going to pull in a transcoder, attach the transcoder to where I want it to be in the workflow, and then I can configure the transcoder. Okay, and you can do that with any part of the flow functionality or any of the attached third-party devices. So depending on what systems you have integrated, you will get a longer or shorter list. And you will simply put together your workflows by saying, these are my sources, these are my workers, and these are my targets, which are usually, for example, an FTP transfer route. Okay, I'm going to add that over here. I need an FTP transfer as well, and I can do the settings of the FTP right here. I will save that to my workflow, and bingo. So I've now updated my Sky workflow, and basically I would now go and test it. If I'm happy with it, I would basically publish it to the live system, to the operational system, and my edited workflow would then continue, or if it's a new workflow, would start to make available a new form of distribution, a new form of processing, what have you. Okay. Watching the time, I'm going to jump into the last bit that I'd like to talk about, I just need to move this down a little bit. There we go. I need to close this up. Before we totally run out of time, I would like to talk about publication and making money, because the parts I've talked about so far are very much about saving time, automating, basically saving money. But the system, as I mentioned, is also quite a potent publishing hub. I'm just going to show you one simple example here. This is a website, since we were already at Porsche before, that we also built for Porsche. This is called News TV. And basically what you find on this website is a couple of categories, and within each category you have content. So you've got some nice content. Oh, yeah. Stop at a nicer location. This content obviously has different formats. Things you can see here, it has metadata. I can do certain things with the content. I can embed it, I can download it, I can share it across all sorts of social media. Then down here I have additional, what we call lanes, i.e. I have certain content that I would like to highlight in my publication system. This can take all sorts of visualization, as you can see here. And if I hit any of these videos, it'll simply play here and offer me the rest of that lane as a scrollable linked list, so to speak. Or at the top here, I have certain categories. For example, I want to go into technology. The system will offer me a list here again. I can play around with this as a different visualization again. The video will play and the additional videos will show up in the video list. So this is a way that Porsche is using to show their content, to show that and share their content with the global fan base, really, or journalists. Obviously, the site follows a certain build because it is designed to cater to a certain group of users. What I really want to get to is I want to quickly show you how this is integrated with the back end. So we talked about these categories up here and the content within. We talked about the categories or lanes, as we call them down here, and the content therein. So let me just quickly log into the back end, which is pretty much the same as the one that we were looking at here. It looks a little, I need to log out of the other system, sorry, my mistake. I should have logged out here first. There we go. Right, log in here. And so I am basically adding one of these, and this could be anything. For SAP, for example, we do their global web TV, and we also do their press service. For EPCOS or TDK, we do their internal global sales material publishing. But this hasn't worked. Please log on. So there are a number of target groups that you would like to address with your content, and this could be from your internal staff, this could be your external fan base, this could be journalists, this could be your sales partners, your resellers, this could be social media, it could be really anything. Oh, something is going wrong here. I need to log out of this first, presumably. Sorry about this, typical. Right, that looks better. Nope, I'm having trouble logging onto this. How very annoying. Okay, look, if I can't get this to work, terribly sorry. And this, of course, worked like 10 minutes ago, and it's now refusing to work. You can imagine we saw the editorial user GUI before, and you remember how I moved stuff into a project or into a room. It's simple drag and drop. Publishing works by exactly the same routine. So where before we had the headlines with, sorry, I'm going to quickly call this up again, projects and rooms with a publishing route attached to it, you would simply have an additional thing called distribution down here, and you would simply pull into your list of distribution channels, you would simply pull your content, i.e. in the folders or subfolders that do that. So it's fully integrated, it's fully automated. Our Playout does VOD, it does live streaming. We've built a very clever live streaming system which doesn't just use CDN for the media, but also for the sites. So there's no setup, there's no scaling. It fully auto scales. If you have 2 viewers or 200 million, makes no difference, no time loss, no lead times, nothing. Okay, I think I'm running out of time. Toby, maybe you would like to take over and solicit some questions.
Thank you very much. Check again. So, thanks for sharing everything. I think there were some parts we could do a separate webinar about. Maybe we do that in the future and to go more in detail. But I have several questions, and also we still would have some time for some more, so don't hesitate to ask questions. The first question is, are you supporting publishing to social media? If so, can you also retrieve usage reports and user comments?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can, and yes, we can. Basically, social media relies on the, we want to be able to use the APIs that the recipient system makes available. And we use that to send content, i.e. video plus metadata plus, depending on what the specific API allows us to do, placement information such as categories. Usually those APIs also allow us to report back, i.e. receive and then report back usage information. And some, but not all, obviously allow commenting, and we would be able to pick up the comments by the same token as the usage information.
Okay, thank you. And another question is, can Flow Center publish content to my VOD portal? Will it manage unpublishing as well? And what about usage reports and generating data for revenue share business models?
No, absolutely. We've got a very nice use case for VOD platforms. Actually, we have two. One is more of a sales platform if you are a rights owner and you want to sell to VOD platforms. So we have that. We fully obviously track any action in the system. So if you were to put a VOD system in front of the Flow Center as a Playout site, i.e. this, we would fully track when you published it, what you published. We would confer the licensing information, i.e. when is the license window, what subscription or pay-per-view models are available at what cost. We would furnish the VOD platform with the playable video material, obviously with the metadata, with the photographic images that you need to publish on the VOD platform. And for sure, we get back the usage information. Since we already have the pricing information, we can double check on what the VOD reported back is the accurate amount of money that was made. And naturally, as we publish, we also unpublish. So for example, in a specific piece of content, let's just pick this. If I know the license window is from a certain date to a certain date, the Flow Center would send that content to a Playout, such as VOD platform, but would automatically also unpublish it from there at the end of the license window.
Okay. And another question is, can Flow Center be controlled by other software systems, like a scheduling application or a newsroom system, for example, or I imagine also a trafficking system?
Yes, we have that case quite a lot, in fact. I mean, we have a really very big and fully documented API, and we are very happy for somebody to attach us to them. I mean, we're quite used to attaching other people to us, but we do get attached as well. And using the API, you have an enormous amount of ability to steer, feed, control, get reports from the Flow Center. So yes, it's absolutely bi-directional. as well as integrating third-party machinery and making it part of our sort of overall scope of workflow building, we can just as well be part of a larger environment, and other people would send us content, send us things to do, i.e. workflows, retrieve content from us, retrieve metadata from us, etc., etc. So we are really very, very open in both directions.
And there is a question about video journalists. How can my video journalist contribute content to my archive?
Well, there's a number of ways. Let's say your video journalist is sitting in the field. Now, the easiest way would be he's just shot something, and he wants to have a simple editing environment. He would simply upload his source file. He could do that via web or via something a little bit faster. So there are a number of ways for him to ingest the content. He would then log onto the system, and we would maybe set him that he only sees his own content, which could be in a project, for example, which is the project called Oliver. So Oliver's uploads go into that project. He would be able to see his file, which is already on the system, but he would see it as a preview, which is the system has already generated a preview, so it's a smaller quality, can easily work online. He may then want to start editing, doing a rough cut. You know, I want this scene, I want that scene, I want that scene, and put those together in a very simple way, very easy to manage GUI. And once he's happy with that, he would send it off to his editor-in-chief, to his boss, in the shape of an approval room, and say, hey boss, this is what I just made, I like it, do you want this finalized, do you want to use this piece? If the boss says yes, the Flow Center would recognize that information because it's linked to the edit that he just created online, and would be able to automatically process that newly created file, the edited file, by either sending it straight into a, let's say, web environment where it would get published immediately. The Flow Center would then take care of preparing the derivatives needed, preparing the metadata scheme that is needed, preparing the thumbnails, etc., and send it over to that publication channel. Or, for example, say, no, this is great, but I do want it to be craft edited. In that case, the Flow Center would send it off to editing station number 7 and notify the operator sitting in front of editing station number 7, including some instructions.
Okay, and now there are 2 questions out of the post-production surrounding. First question is, how does the system interact with external production partners like dubbing or subtitling companies?
Well, again, there are a number of ways you can do this. Let's say it's a company that you work with a lot, so it's really a very close partner. What we would recommend is, why don't you let your partner into your system, but we will give him a user account which allows him to access only the projects that that company is responsible for. So in fact, if Toby was my partner, I would allow him only access to these projects, not to all the other projects. So I would be able to furnish that project with a source file. I may also, of course, create and upload an instruction piece of paper and chuck in the Word document. Then I would tell you, Toby, log onto the system, look into your folder, which is called Toby. I've created a subfolder called job number 5. Here you will find the source file, you will find the instructions file, please do that. Toby would log onto the system, look at the instruction file, download the source file that I gave him, or the collection of source files, do his magic on his local machine and re-upload the processed, i.e. the post-produced item that he's come up with back into the Flow Center, but he would obviously, as I mentioned before, only have access to these folders, and hence his upload would end up in subfolder Toby/job number 5. And you wouldn't either, I would get an automatic notification that that Toby's produced something, I can review it and approve it or disapprove it, etc., etc. A second version of the same thing is I'm going to work with a post-production house which is not so close to me. I would do exactly the same. The only difference is I don't want them in my system. I'm going to use the rooms to do that. So I would create a production room, chuck in a source file. The system would then send a link to Toby, and he would not see this whole environment. He would see a simple room. Okay, and in that room, he would find the source file. He would see the comments. He can download the source file, do his magic, and re-upload into the system. So it's very much the same process, but the GUIs we are using are different. Projects for people you are very close with, rooms for somebody who's a little bit more remote.
Okay, and continuing the post-production environment, can Flow Center be integrated with editing tools like Adobe Premiere and Adobe Interplay?
Yes and yes. We at the moment much prefer Adobe, as I'm sure a lot of people would also, because Adobe was smart enough to build the Adobe panels. So everybody who's familiar with the Adobe products, be it Photoshop, be it Premiere, will know the panels. It's basically a plugin, which means that I can simply make my project again, or even my database, the thing in the middle, available directly to Adobe. I'm sitting in front of Adobe. I simply hit the Open Flow Center panel. There I would see the list of projects, or I can go and search for individual pieces of content, just like I'm searching here. And whatever I find and I like, I would simply pull by drag and drop into my local Adobe machine, or into my cloud-based Adobe machine, of course, do my magic, and then by the same way, i.e. drag and drop, move that back into the project, give it a new name, hit save, and the resulting edited file would be right back in Flow Center, and I would continue the process. Maybe somebody would get a notification, review and approve it, or ask me for a redo, finished. With Avid Interplay, we don't have the luxury of having such a close tie-in. So with Interplay, basically, it's quite simple to exchange files, and you can exchange projects, but we cannot open Avid projects as easily. So we can basically exchange and store any type of information, but we do not have the comfort of the drag and drop usability.
Okay, and now a question about distributed work actually. The viewer asks, we do have a central facility in London, additional offices at the East Coast and in Southern East Europe, as well as various freelancers all over Europe. They contribute to our productions with different production services. So far, we do use Dropbox to exchange these files. What architecture and workflow would you suggest?
Okay, I'm going to quickly jump back into my my slides to answer that one. Thank you for that very nice question. We have a very nice process called, oops, sorry. There we go. I'm showing my surface again. Are you seeing my surface again, Toby?
Yes.
Okay. We have a wonderful thing called flow to flow. So you have a central office. If you look at my chart, it says to the top left, Flow Central. That's you. Then you have several offices with whom you have permanent interaction. Why don't you do a flow-to-flow setup? We don't just have one flow center and everybody who's not sitting in your office needs to work online. Why don't you have several flow centers? And you can hook them up with each other using flow-to-flow. And flow-to-flow basically means that you can design your own workflow if content is to be automatically synchronized across all locations, which we don't actually recommend. You're just making duplicates, or use the workflows to exchange content when it actually makes sense. So let's say I'm sitting not in the central one, but I'm sitting in the Flow Center in Rio, and I've just produced something. So I would upload that into my Flow Center in Rio, and my Flow Center in Rio would get a marker saying, yeah, but please make sure this gets reviewed in London or in Central. My Flow Center would then make a derivative. It would make the set of instructions for a review room, an approval room, and send that set of instructions to the other Flow Center. So it would actually depending if you want the workflow to work that way, send just the derivative, and the London Flow Center would then create a room, one of those approval rooms, and notify the recipient. The recipient would look at the content and say, oh, absolutely fantastic, love this, hit the OK button, at which point the London Flow Center would tell the Rio Flow Center, oh, great, I got an OK, send me the source file. So the source file would then be automatically transferred, or maybe specific derivatives would be transferred. That's depending on how you configure your workflow, fully automatic. There would never be any duplicates if you don't want them, which is good. Nothing ever leaves your system, which is really good. If you just think of data protection, if you think of redundancy, if you think of safety, that's definitely a clever way of doing it. And let's just use the same process, but turn that around. You're sitting in London and you think you saw something that was done in Rio, but you're not quite sure. You simply go onto your flow center in London, and in the search you select but search in Rio. So you can remote search in a different system. You can then access the files and say, oh, that's good, that's what I need, I'm going to ingest that. So it's kind of like an on-demand ingest. We can do other things like you're sitting in Bucharest, and Bucharest is a very small outpost. This could be an external guy that I'm working with. So I'm going to give him a Flow Center 2, but I'm not going to give him a server because he doesn't have that money. I'm going to give him something we call an ant. An ant is a micro system. So it's a very small box. It's an Intel NUC, if you happen to be familiar with those. It's like the size of 4 packets of cigarettes. That's a full-blown server, has GPU transcoding, and it's mobile. So I can send him one of those and hook him up into my overall system, even temporarily. Okay? And alternatively, if I don't want to do the hardware thing with my external temporary production partners, we can go back to what we had before. I can give him access to my central system by giving a login onto the central system. So you can mix and match any way you like. And just because we have that point, just want to quickly show the image. MAM in the box is the Flow Ant. That's a full-blown MAM system. It has GPU transcoding, it has the same software, and it can be integrated into a larger environment using flow to flow. This is both a starter kit for a small environment. It could also be a location kit for, this is one of my offices, but it's a small office. I'm not going to buy the big hardware for that. I don't need to. Okay?
Very good. I think we are running a bit out of time. That's why we follow up with the other questions individually. Oliver, I thank you very much for your time, and I see great potential to go into more details and do webinars on special topics in the future. We'll inform you about that. And yes, thank you very much for your attention, and please reach out if you have further questions, or especially if you would like to have a demo which is a bit more personalized, and if you have an interest that we explain how Flowworks could work for your environment. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.